Good evening, friends. So before I start my presentation, I would like to thank Mrs. Renu Modi here and the entire team of Gallery Espace for giving me an opportunity to make this presentation in Delhi today, and also coming all the way from Calcutta. So the presentation today is a series of photographs and videos on the Sundarbans. So actually these photographs and videos together, I think, with this huge exhibition which we have here on top, will give us a good idea of how actually Paula has developed her work in the various panels and textile works which she has actually done. So before I start, I'll just give a brief background as to how we went to the Sundarbans. Actually what happened was that for many years I've been wanting to go to the Sundarbans, but every time I've been asking my photography friends and other friends who have been going there that what was it like? I mean, did you see anything? And the reply which I got 8 times out of 10 times was, don't go there, you won't see anything. You will see a few monkeys and you will see some deer, and that's about it. Go to Kanha, go to Bandhavgarh, go to Ranthambore, go to Corbett, and so on. So we never went. Year after year it carried on like that. Until finally last year in November we decided to bite the bullet and we went. And as you will see from the photographs and the presentation, it was actually a huge revelation. The landscape of the Sundarbans, the entire tight country, the waterways, the bird life, the animal life, the richness of the entire delta was something which is worth seeing. And now that we've actually broken the ice, and we are just 2 hours away, from our house to drive to the Sundarbans takes us 2 hours, and then you can get onto a boat and within half an hour you're right inside the national park. So it's a shame actually not to go to the Sundarbans. So before I start, let's just run through a bit of data which will help us to understand what is actually happening in the Sundarbans. So the national park area officially is about 2,500 square kilometers, and that is pretty big. It's actually bigger than many central India national parks like Tadoba, Pench and so on. And out of this area, 1330 square kilometers is the core area, which is the area where the tourists cannot go. And that is the area where most of the tigers are. And then you have a 1255 square kilometer buffer area where actually the tourists can go. So the Bangladesh Sundarbans, which is next to us, it's actually the same forest. The animals don't know Bangladesh and India, but it's actually demarcated by the border, is much bigger than us. It's 5950 square kilometers, and that's a huge area. So the history of the Sundarbans was that in 73, when Mrs. Gandhi set up Project Tiger, Sundarbans was one of the reserves which came under Project Tiger in 73. Subsequent to that, in 84, it was elevated to a national park status. In 87, UNESCO made it a World Heritage Site. And in 2019, which is quite recent, it was given the Ramsar Wetlands Heritage Site actually. So the Sundarbans has around 54 islands. Many of these islands are inhabited. There are people on these islands, they live there. They try to eke out a living there. And it has numerous waterways and channels. And the major occupation of the people living there are fishing, agriculture, honey collection and tourism. So this first one, fishing, which the people of the Sundarbans do, they take boats and they go out into the national park. They have permission of the forest, but I think only in certain areas, brings them into direct confrontation with the tiger. And that is the reason why in the Sundarbans you have so many cases of human and tiger conflict. Only last month, on the 20th of August, I read in the Telegraph, one of our Calcutta papers, that a fisherman who had banked his boat at night, somewhere in the middle of the Sundarbans, was attacked by a tiger, and he managed to survive. His friends on the boat managed to somehow beat away that tiger. He had very severe injuries. He was admitted to hospital and he's actually survived. So these sort of conflicts, keep coming up in the Sundarbans. And I think the other reason why this happens is because in Sundarbans, unlike, parks like Kanha, Bandhavgarh, Tadoba, Pench, Ranthambore, which has a large prey base, Sundarbans' prey base may not be that big, and it may be difficult also to get prey. If you see the terrain, you'll realize how difficult it is for a tiger to actually operate in the Sundarbans and actually to catch a deer or a monkey or whatever it is, because the forest is very difficult. And I think it's not the tigers' ideal territory. Like the tigers of the Sundarbans have adapted in a sort of large way to actually swimming across large tracts of water, trying to go from one to the other. So we'll actually have a look at all that as we go through. And the last point in my slide here is the mangrove forests. Actually, these mangroves are very important to the coast as well as to the hinterland. Because if it had not been for this large tract of mangroves, many of the cities behind the Sundarbans, Calcutta being one, would have been very badly affected by the cyclones. Big cyclones like Cyclone Aila, Cyclone Amphan, put all its energies onto the Sundarbans, and the mangroves acted as a protection barrier to protect the hinterland. So, it's very important for us to continue to protect the mangroves and ensure that the Sundarbans remain intact, because if that goes under, then I think the rest of Bengal and whatever is behind us will actually go under as well. So we can take a quick look at this map. I'll just mark out for you. This red line, this whole red line actually, is the Sundarbans National Park. This blue barrier here and this barrier down here is actually the core area of the Sundarbans. This green area is a sanctuary called Shojdekhali Wildlife Sanctuary, which is within the Sundarbans. And this red line, which ends with the blue line, is actually the buffer area. So this is where we go. This is where we are allowed to go. If you want to go here, you need permission from the forest department. And these are some of the islands, Bashanti, Goshaba, Bali. And this is actually where you can stay. There are homestays and hotels to stay here. And this is Canning, which is actually 1 hour away from Calcutta. And Calcutta somewhere up here. So you can drive all the way from here through Canning and come somewhere here to Bali in about 2 hours, and then take a boat and then navigate through the waterways. And this is the part of the West Wildlife Sanctuary of Bangladesh. This is the Bangladesh part of Sundarbans, which actually extends further here. So the presentation is in 2 or 3 parts. The first part we'll take a look at is the landscape of the tide country, because the landscape of the Sundarbans, I found at least for the first time going there, is actually very unique. And a lot of Paula's work which you see here is actually reflected also from here. Yeah, so let us see if we can run this video.
I'll run the presentation for 10 minutes.
So this is the sort of view you would see if you were on a boat in the Sundarbans. And this is actually the landscape, which is a typical Sundarban landscape. You have the roots at the bottom, and then you have the mangroves and the forest, which is further at the back. And on a boat, the boat is actually moving quite fast. That is the reason why the presentation, the video is a bit choppy. But it gives you a good idea of what the Sundarbans actually can be like. So you can see from here how difficult it is to see an animal here, because if the guy is just somewhere inside here, it's unlikely that you'll be able to see him. So these are all the roots which are in the foreground, and basically the mangroves which are actually behind. Yeah. So we'll just take a look at a few pictures. So this is a typical morning in the Sundarbans. This is part of our boat, and the boat is actually going through the waterways, and this is the way we normally go and try to see on both sides of the forest. This is again another view, again from a boat. You can see an egret. This is a cattle egret which is sitting on a branch here, and the parts of the water actually submerge the branches when it comes into high tide. When it's low tide, again it sinks down. Just shots of the Sundarbans to give you an idea of what the terrain is like. Here you can see that the water has already come up and submerged most of the roots of the trees and the plants. Also on the banks of the Sundarbans. Yeah, so sometimes you have these sort of, inlets or outlets rather, where the water actually comes and flows into the main streams. And this tree has obviously been hit by a cyclone or a storm, and it's come down and it's still here on the banks. Yeah, sometimes the light and the reflections are also very interesting. It becomes almost, surreal. So in the evening when the sun is setting on the mangroves, you have reflections in the water like this, which you see from your boat. Here as well, with the roots of the trees and the reflections of the plants in the water. It's quite a surreal landscape actually. I have not seen any landscape like this anywhere else. Even here, the tree is in the water and is just there. This is again, these are actually what is known as the tiger palms, the ones you see at the back. These here, there's a video which I'll show you. And these are some of the other roots which are submerged halfway in the stream. Okay, Charlie. These are the tiger palms, basically, of the Sundarbans. This particular palm. It's called tiger palms because the tiger takes shelter, in the middle of these palms and is hiding inside here most of the time and makes attacks from here onto the river. Let's close the wheels here. So I was talking about roots. I mean, if you look at these roots, and you may find some resemblance to, the work which is around you over here. So these are the pneumatophores actually, which are a type of roots on the banks of the Sundarbans. This too, also, I think it's there on that wall. Yeah, so that finishes the first part. I'll just run you through some of the incidents which we saw in the Sundarbans of different birds and animals. So we spotted this collared kingfisher. There are a lot of kingfishers in the Sundarbans, difficult to photograph because they're very far away. But this one was not that far away. It's a collared kingfisher, not seen very often. It's not as common as the common kingfisher or the white kingfisher. So this kingfisher spotted, I think, a crab or something at the bottom. I'll just show you. So it took off, left the water, and it left its thing and came. And here it's actually caught. Yeah, it's actually caught the crab. So we saw it catching the crab, and then again it took the crab, and it flew back. Here it is. It took the crab, it flew back. So I was sitting and tracking it as it flew back, and then it went and sat on a branch here. It still has the crab in its mouth. And if you see the next slide, you'll find that it's gone and joined its mate, and there's no more crab. So it's obviously finished the crab and it's had a meal. So if you sit for some time, you can see very interesting, features like this in the Sundarbans itself. Let's continue. Yeah, so the lesser adjutant stalks are actually also part of the Sundarbans. Huh?
It's there behind.
It's here. Okay, she's saying, Paula is saying it's here. The lesser adjutant stalks. So we saw a pair of these, and then we also shot a video. I think the video comes next. So we took a look at the video and then look at them. So there's plenty to see, as you can see. It's not that it's you spend the whole day without seeing anything. So this is the lesser adjutant stalk. It was actually looking to eat here. It's actually managing to pick up stuff from the ground. There it is. Yeah, so this is the close-ups of the stalk. This is the bird when it's actually moving through the mangroves, typical in the edge of the water. It comes out from the forest and it's on the edge. So this was two of them. The mate also joined them together. And it finally decided to fly off to another area where it would get other things to eat. And interestingly, you can see the entire Sundarbans backdrop of the roots and everything behind the bird. Here also, all around. So it's quite impressive actually when it goes up in flight. So some of the other creatures which we saw, the spotted owlet is very difficult to spot because it sits actually way inside, and we were lucky to actually get this sighting, and I was able to get a fairly good image also of the spotted owlet. Normally you don't see it in the day, but we were lucky to see it in the daytime.
The spotted owlet is also sitting there.
This is one of
those vertical ones there.
So this is a changeable hawk eagle. This bird you see in many other parks of India also, and also difficult to spot, but again we were lucky to get a good view through the branches. It's a very powerful bird. I've seen it in other parks actually hunting. And this is another raptor of the Sundarbans, the Brahmini kite, which is also quite popular, and you see a lot of the Brahmini kites, most of them soaring above. This is a pond heron. This is typical of the Sundarbans. You'll find a pond heron on the edge of the water, actually looking for things to eat and so on. And interestingly, the color of the wings and the color of the Sundarban background is almost merging with each other. So unless it's in good light, it's very difficult to spot it or get a picture out of it. It just merges with the brown of the forest. This is a great egret, also one of the egret family. Also a popular bird there. You see a lot of them and the different other varieties of egret, small egret, cattle egret, and so on. And this is a land monitor. There's a series later on water monitor, but this is actually a land monitor which is on the branches of a tree. So there are a lot of the reptile family here as well, and the land monitor is one of them. So the water monitor, yeah. The water monitor is also known as the Bengal monitor, and on the edge of the banks, actually is right at the edge, the water is somewhere here. You'll find them like prehistoric creatures. This guy is eating something, he's got something in his mouth. There's a video also of him which will come. So this is the way they move through the banks. This chap is going down actually. It's actually pretty powerful. It has very big claws and so on. And this is the skin which is with the fangs in the front. This is a small video on the water monitor. It's very slow, really slow actually, and just moves inch by inch. It's trying to get something to eat. There. It's managed to catch an insect or a crab or something like that. So we never saw a tiger actually, but our guide Krishanu, who goes very often, saw a tiger. So people have been seeing tigers in the Sundarbans now. So if you go now, you will possibly be able to see a tiger. And this is a tigress with a cub crossing the waters of the Sundarbans, actually. So this is my last sequence. This was actually a sequence between a crocodile and a cheetal. Sadly, the cheetal came out a loser. But interestingly, Sundarbans has about 200 plus crocodiles. It has about 100 tigers. So the crocodile would be in a way the major predator of the Sundarbans. And the crocodile is so well camouflaged, it sits in the water like this. If you don't look closely, you'll think it's this, but it's actually not this. And sometimes it goes under the water and it sort of hides itself. And then it waits for an unsuspecting victim to pass or cross and then actually pounces on it. So this is the normal terrain where you would find the cheetal. The cheetal would be an animal of the grasslands, but in Sundarbans the grasslands are few and far between, so it needs to come out of the forest and maybe get something, graze on the grass here. This is one heron flying away. So this would be a terrain of the cheetal, and we had a pair of cheetals Yeah. Have you missed a slide? No. No, it's okay. So we had a pair of cheetahs. This picture actually shows you what the cheetal can eat. You know, normally it would eat grass and grasslands, but here there's no grass. So it's actually trying to eke out an existence from these pneumatophore roots and things like that actually. So on. Yeah, so this was a pair of cheetal which we spotted. The mother and the fawn, they were grazing in the morning on the last day at the banks, and the light was very good. So I stopped there to take some pictures, and then a drama unfolded which we will see now. So they wanted to cross the water. There was a canal which was maybe 50 feet long, and they wanted to cross, but they were scared because they were not sure whether there was a crocodile somewhere lurking somewhere. So you can see the mother is actually looking that side. There is a crocodile that side, but she hasn't been able to find it, and the fawn is behind her waiting to see whether they can cross or not. Yeah. So this is a video. We'll look at the video first, and then we'll go through the rest of the pictures. So this is the two cheetahs which I photographed from the video, and they're on the banks. Some of the birds are here, and they're grazing, and they're thinking of going across. Pond heron is also moving up along the banks. So here they are, thinking what to do. And finally they decide to cross. So here is the mother, and here is the baby, but here is a crocodile. And this crocodile was lurking somewhere here, under the water. They suspected it, and it's here right now. But you'll just see the amazing speed at which this crocodile will cover the distance to this fawn. It's just moved up here now. I'm just putting my red marker, so you can see where it is. And it's now somewhere moved up here. The mother's, here's the fawn, and there it is, and it's gone. Yeah. So it covered this distance in a lightning speed. I mean, I never imagined that a crocodile could go through water like this. And the mother managed to escape. Here she is, and she looks back. Poor thing. She looks back and runs away. And then that's the unfortunate end of the cheetal fawn. And here's the crocodile actually going back to shore with the kill. So it's the first time we actually saw a kill like this, and people in the Sundarbans told us that it's very rare to see a kill like this, and it's usually not documented either. So this could possibly well be one of the initial documentation. We went back later and found the crocodile still here on the banks with the cheetal fawn, and trying, because the fawn was very big. I think the crocodile, it was actually too big for the crocodile to handle, and it was struggling to actually deal with it really. You can see it's actually kept it on the bank here, and it'll come up again and try to drag it back because it's scared that somebody will, some other predator will come. There it is. You can see here. Very gingerly, it's moving and coming back. So, for us, I think it was a sighting of a lifetime. I mean, I don't think anybody will have an opportunity to have a sighting like this and also to document this entire sighting. So we'll take a look at some of my pictures now, because I was not shooting video, I was actually shooting pictures. Past this. Yeah, so this is a close-up of the cheetal mother and the fawn, which you saw in the video. They're crossing over. And so this is the poor unfortunate cheetal after the kill. Crocodile is going to swim back now to the shore. You can just see it here. And again you see how well the crocodile is camouflaged, I mean, if it hadn't, this color, the color of the crocodile, the color of the water is just this brown patch which has been submerged, which actually shows that the crocodile is carrying something back. Normally you would have missed it. Here is the crocodile. The eyes and the animal here. And the color of the water is also green. So this is what the crocodile was trying to do. It was trying to actually, break up the prey into smaller parts and smash it, but it was not really very successful. It continued to do this. It managed to get something to eat. Holding it up, and then it's going to throw it onto the bank. So it was very sad to see it, but ultimately I realized that the crocodile also has to eat. I mean, the crocodile has indeed that the crocodile dies. So one of them has to eat and one of them has to live. So there it is. Just put it back onto the bank and then it's going to drag it back again onto the shore. Immensely strong, immensely strong, I mean huge. And then it brings it back all the way here, again to submerge it in the water to protect it. And this Brahmini kite was actually sitting on this tree patiently right through this whole saga was going on, hoping that if the crocodile somehow loses the chital, that the Brahmini kite can sort of get in and probably get a morsel to eat. So the whole cycle actually reflects very well of the law and the rules of the jungle. You know, it gives the whole picture very well, and so you feel bad for the chital. As I said, the crocodile has to eat to survive. So this brings me to the end of my presentation, and I think spectacular skies in Sundarbans, so it's very difficult actually not to take pictures. Thank you so much.
After that very enthralling sequence of the crocodile finding its prey, and a prey that it probably gets only once in a way, because usually the crocodile survives on fish. He actually lives in that canal and he's resident there, and he usually survives on fish, but that day he got lucky and made the killing of a lifetime. But after that, the poor crocodile also makes heavy weather of the chital, because he needs to soften the flesh, he needs to rot it in the saline water before he can actually partake of it. So nothing comes easy in the Sundarbans. What does come easy is the human being, this myth that the Sundarbans tiger is a man-eater is only because man is the slowest of all animals and has the softest flesh. So therefore the man, the human being, constitutes the easiest prey for the tiger, and when they stray into the forest, which is actually the tiger's terrain, when the tiger attacks him, he simply cannot make a getaway. And once they get a taste of human flesh, which is just so much easier to eat than a cheetal or a wild boar, it's just easy prey. And so then whenever he finds a human being, he attacks again and again. So the only way to actually reduce this is by reducing human-animal conflict, which is something that they're trying hard to do in the Sundarbans by finding alternative means of livelihood for the local population. And there's a big debate. We have sociologists here. There's a big debate as to whether that means the sort of gradual disappearance and eradication of traditional ways of livelihood, but also it's a hard choice between conserving the environment, the flora, the fauna, or providing human beings who were actually never meant to be there at all because it is inhospitable terrain for human habitation. So there are all these debates around the Sundarbans and its fragility as an ecosystem. So before I actually give all of you here a walkthrough, I would like to share a little bit about the materials and the processes using which I made this body of work around the Sundarbans. Because there have just been, since the show started, there have been just so many questions on the material and the process that I thought I'd just share it. Some of my artist friends may sort of guess at the processes, but maybe this is more for the non-artists in the audience. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how this series of work began. So this is a small etching that you see kind of as the frontispiece to the show with the title upstairs. And so I teach in the Department of Printmaking at Rabindra Bharati University in Calcutta. And every year we have an art fair in December. And a lot of times I sort of work my way into the process of beginning a new project through small work that I make in the course of this art fair. And we actually make these small works for our calendars. We publish a whole bunch of print calendars, as in original graphic print calendars, etchings, lithographs, relief prints, silkscreen prints, etc. And we also do drawing calendars, collages, and so on, which we then sell for small sums of money to raise funds for our Students Aid Fund. This is an annual exercise. So the etching was made for that purpose. And then here you can see the calendars. These are drawing and collage calendars. And I used gamchas or cotton towels that were made during that were made in the Sundarbans to sort of simulate the flora and fauna of the Sundarbans. And you can see the tiger and you can see the crab there. So tigers actually on a lean day in the Sundarbans will eat crabs for lack of any other. The Sundarbans tiger will eat almost anything to survive because the prey base is so low. And on the left there you saw the kingfisher that Sujoy showed, and so that's sort of a simulation of the kingfisher. You can see the calendar here. And the land monitor and the crocodile amongst the roots of the mangroves, the pneumatophores, and so on. So this is how, a lot of times I make small etchings, drawings, etc. to work my way into a project. The pin drawings on lino cards are on display upstairs. And so the first step was to make these black and white lino cards, which some of you may have guessed. And once again, this was generated from the university. We published a set of lino card folios, limited edition folios. All the teachers got together to do this, and this was my contribution to the 2 folios. And later, I used my artist proofs to make pin drawings on them to sort of show the animals that inhabit the Sundarbans as kind of shadow images that lurk in the mangroves. And you've seen from Sujoy's photographs how difficult it is to distinguish them in that clay soil and with those mangled roots spreading across the banks. The other thing which I should tell you is that this drama of the tide ebbing and flowing, of the water rising and falling, goes on through the day. And so when the water rises, as you saw from Sujoy's photographs, the terrain changes entirely, and the trees actually look like they're floating in the sea of water. But when the water goes down, that's when the banks reveal themselves, and you get to see the mangroves, and if you're lucky, you get to see the fauna as well. So I came round to trying to simulate the mangroves, which was my main challenge. And I was looking for material that is able to sort of simulate what I had experienced and seen. So the set of work that you see here in front of you was made, so you know, this body of work and the body of work that you see here around you was made in this wonderful paper making studio that one of our fellow artists, Anupam Chakravarti, who's a wonderful paper maker, it was made in his studio. He actually has an academy of handmade paper, and many artists work in his studio. So these works were made over there in Kolkata. And so this is, you know, you kind of see these drying after they've been dipped in a vat of paper pulp. And but this is how they began. So I'm just showing you one set of work just to show the process. So this is on a wooden frame. I first stretched a grid, and after that with jute rope. And after that I used again the same jute rope of different thicknesses. I used the rope you know, I knotted the rope to create the different kinds of mangrove roots. So in this case, it's the pneumatophores or the breathing roots that you saw in Sujoy's photographs. And after that, what I did was I dipped them in a vat of paper pulp. So in this case, this is recycled Nepali rice paper, which has this sort of creamish color. It's undyed, unbleached, and so we dipped it in the vat and lifted it off, and so the pulp fundamentally just clings to the rope. It has to be some kind of organic fiber. You cannot have a synthetic fiber because the pulp will slip off. So that's why the jute rope. And then you know, there's a little bit of manipulation. You dip some parts where you want it to be opaque for longer stretches, and you know, and try to kind of do this little manipulation to create your image. After that, I made drawings on, once again, on a slightly darker rice paper and in colored inks. And then I layered that behind the mesh. So there's one frame and then there's another frame. And then the whole thing gets backlit, as you can see on your right, to create this image. And the reason being that why did I adopt this process? That's what I guess is most important. So once again, as I said, that sightings in the Sundarbans, and you saw from Sujoy's photographs as well, that they are extremely elusive, very, very elusive. One is that the ebb and flow of the tide itself makes sightings very difficult, and the other is that the terrain is such that it is extremely difficult to spot anything, and you constantly feel like you are being watched rather than watching. There's this constant sense of something looking at you, rather than vice versa, even though you're the tourist in that space. So the birds are particularly well camouflaged unless and until the tide goes down and they come out onto the bank. So that is why I was trying to sort of simulate this now you see me, now you don't kind of experience that tremendous sense of camouflage that the Sundarbans terrain offers to its fauna. So the pulp panels are the works behind us, and so this is actually the material. It is recycled rag pulp, so essentially pulp or rather paper that is made from rag, cotton rag, and after that, so what we did in this case was we recycled the rag pulp paper and in an industrial beater, and then dyed it to actually get this color. I was trying to simulate the clayey soil of the Sundarbans, and I was really struggling actually to find an appropriate material that would not just simulate its physical character and texture, but also a material that would enable me to make the process itself is also very important, and it's kind of metaphoric to indigenous processes of actually building and layering walls in India in many rural and tribal areas. So I'm going to share a small video. To sort of show you the making. So what we literally did was we laid these large 2-scale drawings down on the table and put a plastic sheet over it. You can see the drawing there, and then by hand we literally start layering the pulp. And if you can see, there are fibrous sort of substances in the pulp. So this is all jute and jute fiber and rope that we've cut up into small pieces and mixed in with the pulp in order to give it that texture that the Sundarban soil has. And then we so here you can get a sense of the scale and how it was made. And we are literally, so what we literally did was, if you're familiar with, how in our villages they make mud houses by, what we call mitti lepna or gobar lepna, that's literally how we made it. We were taking the pulp, slapping it onto the drawing, leveling it with our palms, and so when you look at these works, you can see the imprints of the fingers and the making, and keeping that sort of indigenous process of making in place was very integral to these works, because I did want to simulate the, somewhere in the background, I did want to simulate the traditional ways of living that existed in the Sundarbans, and today, because it's all glass and concrete, the earth, the cyclones and so on completely take their toll on these constructions. So and then we embedded the ropes and the jute and so on into the pulp while making, so that it all dried together and it was held in place. And these are my students who I often work with, and who are actually integral to realizing my projects. Without them, it would never be possible, because I spend my whole day from Monday to Friday in the university. These are the holocaust animals which you see on the on the panels. So once again, we are making them in the paper making studio at the university, and my students are helping me do this. And all of this is a kind of give and take, where I get my work done. The students, it's a kind of mentor-mentee process where we work together, and it's a very organic way of learning and teaching and growing together. So what happens is, with these animals, you first make sandbags. So these are cotton bags in the shape of the animals, and we stuff them with sand. and then you put them in a, you dampen them in, or rather you soak them, not dampen them, you soak them in a bucket of water, and while they're wet, you pull them out and you layer them with the paper pulp. And just to show you how it's done. So this is lifting the pulp from the trough of water, and then you put it down on a bed or a couch, and you press, you kind of squeeze the water out, and the sheet of paper is formed, and you remove the excess water, and then you can kind of, because it's rag pulp, so it kind of meshes together like textile, and then you tear it off in bits, or you use the pulp itself and you layer it onto the sandbag. And then you put it to dry, you wrap it in damp cotton cloth, and you leave them all to dry on blotting paper, and they dry slowly. They take a few weeks to dry. And that's my little menagerie, drying. And then I used hemp and jute fiber to sort of complete the animals as I went along. The textile works. So I'm going to talk about the big folding screen that's on the top, and just take you through the stages of how it was made. So at first I used the batik process, and these are the wax drawings on Dupion silk. So batik, for those of you who know the process, it's a mix of beeswax and resin, and you draw with it on hot wax on the cloth. And then I dyed, dip dyed, indigo on the top and madder at the bottom. And this is after removing the wax. So the roots, and on top the banyan's canopy, they all come into view. And these are the, so these are like 2 panels each, so there are actually 4 panels here, as seen on the top. And then I wanted to dye the center to simulate water, and you know, the flowing water of the delta. And so I went for a shibori dye process, which is a Japanese technique of tie and dye, and this is sort of how it happens. And this is once it's tied and it's ready to be dyed, you tie it. So depending on how much of the dye you want, you tie it tightly or you tie it loose. The tighter you tie it, the less dye you get. So this is after the dye. If you tie it loosely, then you get a better dye. And so this is the silk drying after the shibori dye was done. And you can see the pneumatophores there. And these are the panels as you see them upstairs. When we go up, I'll talk a little more about the panels themselves. Okay, I'm going to begin here without wasting any time. So, these works came first, and there are 6 in this series. There are 3 up here. So, I was actually working on Wajid-Ali-Shah, Nawab Wajid-Ali-Shah, and his menagerie, which was my main preoccupation. So, for those of you who might know about Wajid-Ali-Shah's history, may or may not know, so Wajid-Ali-Shah spent the last 30 years of his life in Calcutta. So he, after he he was dethroned and his estate was confiscated in Awadh. He was heartbroken, and he, believing in the British sense of fair play and justice, he decided to go to Calcutta and appeal to the British Governor General for the reinstatement of his throne. And so he arrived there. So amongst the things that were confiscated together with his estate was also his menagerie, and to which he was deeply attached. And so he, so he was very heartbroken by this. And so the British told him that you can, maybe keep 1 or 2 animals. You can choose some animals to keep. But this he found extremely insulting, and so he said, no, I will build my menagerie from scratch. And so he came to Calcutta, and he kept waiting for an audience with the Governor General and so on. And then what happened was that the mutiny of 1857 broke out. And the mutineers in Lucknow, they actually mutinied in the name of Wajid-Ali-Shah. And one of his begums who had stayed back, she personally led them into battle on elephant back. And the news, and Wajid-Ali had no clue of any of this. And so the news filtered through to Fort William in Calcutta, and the British promptly imprisoned Wajid-Ali. And he remained in Fort William for 2 long years. And when he came out to celebrate his freedom, he acquired 16 wives and a bunch of animals to start his menagerie afresh. And it is said that he lavished more money from his already lavish privy purse. He lavished more money on his menagerie than on his harem. So, so I was very intrigued by Wajid-Ali's menagerie. And it's very interesting to read stories about Wajid-Ali because, he himself operated within, between fact and fiction. Because he was a poet, he was a playwright, he was a musician and a dancer par excellence. So, he constantly fantasized, and it's hard to understand what is fact and what is fiction. And but all of this suited me very well. And so I started investigating Wajid-Ali, and so one of the first things I did was look at his built history. I took myself to Matia Burj and Garden Reach and so on. So this is actually, so the handkerchiefs in the middle are in those 2 works, and in this work actually document Wajid-Ali's built history. And I'm simulating here on Dhaka muslin, which was a very, very coveted textile during that time. I'm trying to simulate the very ephemeral character of Lucknow chikankari embroidery. so I'm doing this white on white embroidery. And so this is BNR House where he lived initially. It's in Garden Reach. It's a Southeastern Railway property. And this is where he lived initially when he arrived in Kolkata for a short period, but he did live there. And so Wajid-Ali actually had so afterwards, when he came out of Fort William and so on, he acquired a large tract of land in Matia Burj, which is on the banks of the Hooghly, right on the river, and that is where he built what was called a Chota Awadh, and very little remains of his built history. But whatever fragments remain, I try to document and construct histories. So one of the stories, and this I should share with you, stands on the opposite bank of the Botanics in Kolkata. And in Shibpur, sorry, the Botanics is on the opposite bank, and it's in Shibpur, which is in Howrah district. And so many of you may know about the Great Banyan, which is why most people visit the Botanics in Calcutta, and a lot of people come just to see the Great Banyan. So the Great Banyan is this wonderful tree that has survived, the passage of time. So the original tree, because it got diseased, the original tree was amputated, but it has survived through its prop roots, and there's this large canopy of branches that has dropped prop roots down to the ground. So it's like a forest. It's one tree that has become a forest, and it is gradually moving towards the river. They call it the walking tree or the eternal tree because it's walking towards the river. Now the Botanics is bang opposite Matia Burj, where Wajid-Ali's estate used to be, and this banyan and its canopy actually recurs again and again and again in my work. It's there in these works, it's there in that textile work, because this tree actually stands witness to the vagaries of time. And that is that is a metaphor that I create. And you were just asking me that what is the link. So the Hooghly, as it flows through Kolkata, through Matia Burj, it is actually moving towards the delta. And so it is a continuing geography where the river, not so far from Matia Burj, actually meets the delta, which is the Sundarbans. So geographically, that is the connect. And so Wajid-Ali, when he made his menagerie in Matia Burj, he actually had a large collection of snakes. And he kept these snakes in an island in the middle of a water body. And so that is why these, this handkerchief with the buildings are in the middle of the water. The banyan surrounds it on all sides, and as you know, in colonial architecture, there's often guardian animals that you find guarding buildings. So in the bottom there, straight ahead of you is the Shahi Masjid, which was Wajid-Ali's personal masjid where he used to pray, and on the left is Umda Mahal, which is this beautiful mosque adjacent to the Siptanabad Imambara where Wajid-Ali is buried, built by one of his begums, one of the begums who he actually acquired in Calcutta after exiting Fort William. So I should also tell you that this collection of snakes went into making the snake house in the Alipur Zoo in Calcutta. And for those of you who may have grown up in Calcutta or visited Calcutta, you might remember that we used to be taken to the zoo and we used to definitely be shown the snake house because it was sort of the high point of the Calcutta Zoo. So, but there is no trace of Wajid-Ali's contribution to building that, to actually starting that zoo with his animals. So, if you'll just gather around on this side. So, continuing with Wajid-Ali's legend, so someone was asking me that where does all this connect? So, so this is the work where Wajid-Ali-Shah's menagerie meets the Sundarbans. So, legend goes, as I shared with you, that Wajid-Ali set sail from Awadh on his beloved. Just give me, yeah, ek to pore. So, Wajid-Ali set sail from Awadh on the Gomti in a barge for Calcutta. And so this is Wajid-Ali with his begums in what we call a Moyurponkhi Noko, or a peacock barge. And so he, so this, I often use, I upcycle textiles. So this is a sari that belonged to me. My mother had given it to me in my trousseau. It's a Bengal Tangail, and it fell apart. And I tend to hang on to, my textiles are very precious to me, so I tend to hang on to them. And so this is the, it's part of the achal, or the pallu of the sari, and it has these beautiful portraits on them. And so I thought this is perfect for making, for trying to simulate Wajid-Ali and his begums. And so they set sail from Awadh, and Wajid-Ali, as I said, was given to flights of fancy. And he imagined, and this he has actually written, he imagined that he left Awadh in procession, preceded by a pair of each animal from his menagerie, and followed by his begums, his musicians, his dancers, and his soldiers in that order. But the truth is, as per the East India Company records, that he left in ignominy by night and set sail on the Gomti, and he arrived in Calcutta in complete ignominy at what is called Bichali Ghat in Matia Burj, and Bichali means cattle fodder. So Bichali till date is a ghat where cattle and fodder are actually offloaded. And it is highly unlikely that the last emperor of India should disembark at a place like Bichali Ghat. But that is what happened. That is the truth. So Wajid-Ali, in a certain sense, his tragic destiny, and the fact that he was a prisoner of his destiny, is also a metaphor for me for the tragedy that has befallen our rivers, our landscapes, our ecosystems, which are fast becoming a disappearing myth that we are just unable to hold on to. We're just allowing it to slip through our fingers. So, so Wajid-Ali, Shatarupa, can you play the song, please? So Wajid-Ali, when he was imprisoned in Fort William, wrote some of his most famous verses, his tumris, his ghazals. And one of them that he wrote is the famous ghazal Babul Mora, which Shatarupa will play for us. And this was sort of, in a certain sense, my inspiration for this work, amongst other things. But you know, the poignancy of that verse, and he writes of his beloved Awadh as a lover, and you know, writes these pains to his lover, pining for what he had forever lost. So, Shatarupa? Yeah, not working? Okay, so, so here again you have the banyan on the top, the canopy of the banyan. You have the different routes of the Sundarbans. You have, now in this case, I travel a lot of forests, and here there are the, so one of the forests that we've been to is the Serengeti in Tanzania, and we're going there again very soon in 3 weeks' time. So here there are the animals from the Serengeti, and I'm traversing different geographies. This could be the Gomti, this could be the Mara, this could be the Hooghly. I'm traversing all these different geographies. That is Girija Devi's famous rendition of Babul Mora. I'm just going to allow you 2 minutes to absorb the work in the background of that song.
স্টিচিং করে তো সেটা অ্যাপ্লিক করে করেছে, যেটা এই বাঘটাই ওখানে দেখা যাচ্ছে, এখানে নদীর মধ্যে লোক দিয়ে আছে,
সাঁতার কাটছে।
হ্যাঁ।
Interesting that the zebras that you have having a lot of dream time so I was actually at Australia, where I had gone for a walk in the mangroves there with Okhankar local Wajid-Ali-Shah people, and they have similar ways of like portraying the mangroves and the forests and this and that. It's very
Shatarupa, will you just turn that down a bit so we can carry on? Okay, so we'll try to carry on. So here, you know, there are the animals from the Serengeti. In the landscape, you know, of the mangroves on the one hand and the banyan on the other. And I'm also, so the other thing, so what I'm looking at the menagerie as a space of incongruity. Because in a menagerie, we have all kinds of animals which don't belong in that environment at all. And we fill up the menagerie with animals which we collect in menageries or zoos. And in Wajid-Ali's case, he was not collecting animals because he had any great love of them. he was simply collecting animals because it was fashionable for the aristocracy in that day and age to collect exotic animals, and these also often came as diplomatic gifts, and that is why he had this menagerie. And so I was looking at the menagerie as a space of incongruity, and that actually connected me eventually to the Sundarbans. It was a continuing it was an organic process that took me from the idea of that menagerie and Wajid-Ali's estate on the banks of the river flowing from there into the Sundarbans. And on this side of this screen, I actually come to the Sundarbans landscapes and the animals from the Sundarbans. And here you see animals. So here you see the rhino, which actually became extinct from the Sundarbans 2 centuries ago. And the interesting thing is that for those of you who have seen rhinos in the wild, you'll know that it is a tall grass animal. But there's no tall grass in the Sundarbans now. So it is more than, so there must have been tall grass at some point in time for rhinos to survive there, but clearly the landscape, the terrain has changed entirely. You have here the crocodile, who is clearly the apex predator in the Sundarbans. It's not the tiger who's the apex predator. The landscape there belongs to the crocodile. He reigns supreme because he can navigate those waterways, he can navigate those swift canals, he can survive eating aquatic animals. He's the one who knows how to survive. The tiger, called the Bengal tiger because it originated in the Sundarbans, obviously migrated across the country and became more comfortable in central India where now it thrives. But in the Sundarbans, as I was explaining downstairs, the tiger actually struggles to survive. For the tiger's survival, humankind, the forest department and so on, has introduced a prey base, which is not native to the Sundarbans. So the cheetal is amongst them, as is the wild boar. And it is very clear from the videos that you saw of the crocodile and cheetal kill, that the cheetal cannot actually operate in that terrain at all. The cheetal has no grass to feed on, so it's trying to somehow eke out sustenance from those pneumatophores and so on. There's brackish water, which is not possible for its survival, and the cheetal's only advantage is its speed. But in that clayey soil, the cheetal cannot run. The cheetal or the wild boar's hoofs sink into the clayey soil. So when the predator attacks the cheetal hasn't a hope in hell. The cheetal simply cannot get away. It cannot survive. So there are all these incongruities that have been created in that landscape by mankind in order to feed the tiger. And so yeah, that's it. And then you have the last panel where the boat actually, recedes into the background, docking as it did eventually at Bichali Ghat in Matia Burj. And so this kind of brings us to the Sundarbans. That work, as I said, was the beginning of how, where and how it all started. I spoke to you about that. We have the little, the pin drawings on linocut here. These are backlit now inside the frames. So they kind of, the animal emerges against the background. These are the little Holocaust animals. And we can go back down, where I will not talk very long, since I've already said a lot. You can follow me down if you'd like to come. So, yeah, so as I said, you know, I talked about these works while I was making my presentation. You can see them more clearly now that the screen has been moved. So, these are the tiger palms, or what are known as the nipa palms, which have also, they're also called the mangrove palms very often because they've adapted themselves to the terrain and learned to survive on the salt water. They provide the best camouflage for the tiger, because you simply, if he's in those palms, you simply cannot distinguish him. There's no way you'll ever be able to see him. And so, as I was saying, you know, when you're in there, you have this constant feeling of being watched rather than watching. And yeah, so, and these are the pneumatophores with the rhinos, which became extinct, and the seahorse, who is not quite a mythical animal, but there are many, many myths and legends which surround the seahorse. It's a tiny animal, but you know, there are many stories that have been devoted to the seahorse across the world, legends, fairy tales, myths, etc. And I use this animal because the Sundarbans is so steeped in myth and legend, and there's so many stories that are around it that, you know, to recreate, to sort of signify some of the enigma of that terrain, of, you know, the place itself, I kept this animal here. And then these are the prop roots. And again, as I said, that I'm looking at all of this as a space of incongruity. And while we have the water monitor that you saw in Sujoy's presentation and the crocodile in here who are native to this terrain, you also have the lion from the Serengeti, and you have the zebra from the Serengeti, who don't belong in this landscape at all. So, if you'd like to take a moment to look at this animation, you can watch it at your own leisure. It's about 6 minutes long. And so this was, again, as I was saying, to talk about process. This was a long time in the making. This is actually made from a book of lino cuts on the like black and white lino cuts, like you saw upstairs, on this beautiful walnut shell handmade paper. And so the brown that you see is actually the color of the paper. And then we did some manipulating with the colors and the black and white, because you can do all of that digitally. And then this is really the work where Wajid-Ali's menagerie meets the Sundarbans. If you listen to the text, the main protagonist of this animation is actually the landscape, the river, the wind, and then and so the story is that the zebras from Wajid-Ali's menagerie, who live on the banks of the river, they fight and they disrupt the whole landscape, and the river goes into spate and shatters what I call here the porcelain palace. And the porcelain palace is, of course, metaphoric of Wajid-Ali's, you know, Wajid-Ali himself and his built history, which has all disappeared into oblivion, but is also symbolic of the destruction that we have brought upon ourselves by not protecting our environment. So I'll leave you to watch this. It runs in a loop, and there's tea and something to eat in there. Thank you so much.